一天大概能测多少个？
一天大概要测平均7、8千吧，
7、8千，多的时候呢？
多的时候就1万多。
你自己平时抽吗？那你下班之后还抽吗？
下班之后。
I'm slowly building up my motivation to quit, and today's the day. I actually have a whole graveyard of them. This isn't even half, there's more back there. I might think I'm overreacting, but if you've ever tried nicotine, it's really freaking hard to quit. Read online that one of the side effects of nicotine withdrawal is insomnia, and I have not been able to go to sleep tonight.
I'm not a boot no more, bro.
I got you, bro. I bought like 3. I'll give you one.
You can buy them out in town now?
Yeah, they're at the kiosk in the mall, bro.
So I've been wanting to make this video for a while because I've seen so many like viral clips on social media of vapes just getting like even more crazy. Like I saw one which I think was fake. It looked like someone was calling someone on his vape. I've seen vapes that are like basically smartwatches, and obviously you can probably, you know, configure these things to be anything, but what you probably have all noticed, and this wouldn't just be like relegated to social media, is in your own life, you're seeing disposable vapes everywhere because people obviously, just like cigarettes, just chuck them anywhere when they're done with them, and they're just becoming such an eyesore. Also, this behavior is obviously, you know, a symptom of this being picked up by children even more. And we're seeing a weird thing in society is that when something is kind of proven to not be as bad as something, it seems to like go around the other way. So I think this is something that's happened with like smoking weed as well, in that because it was demonized for so long, now it's become legalized and more mainstreamed as, you know, you can use it for medicine, which has always been a thing, and just people talking about the benefits of it. It seems like people just do it thinking there's no consequences. And I feel the same with vape, in that obviously cigarettes have been rightly demonized for decades and decades, but now you have something like a vape, and because it's obviously better for you than a cigarette in terms of what you're actually smoking, people now, and thanks to the marketing, just think there's actually like nothing wrong with this, and you should just take it up as something to do because there's basically like no downsides, because you're not smoking all those carcinogens or tar like you would with like a real cigarette. But in this video today, I just want to talk about all the issues with vaping. I want to talk about the environmental cost. I wanted to talk about like these factories from that video. And I also want to talk about the real problems with like nicotine addiction, because for the last 5 years, disposable vapes have risen and they're so colorful. They have very, you know, I guess like candy inspired flavors. So you see them being sold in all like news agents and corner shops. And as we're going to talk about, things like vape are being picked up by loads of non-smokers, which seems to kind of like negate a lot of the benefits. Because if you were someone who was never going to smoke and is now addicted to vaping, then yeah, it's not really a good thing. Just be like addicted to nicotine when there are obviously other health downsides to this. And I know people in the comments will be saying, you know, as a society, we're addicted to sugar, fast food. I've made whole videos about us all being addicted to caffeine, and I do respect like those arguments as well, but it's pretty clear with the method of vaping and the quantity of nicotine in these vapes at the moment that these things are actually a lot more dangerous to your health than things like, let's say, caffeine. So all of that coming up for you today. Please follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on my personal and my travel Instagram. I'm trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible. Benefits include access to videos early and ad-free on the Patreon page itself, and also access to the patrons Discord server. So the first part of this video, I want to talk about people struggling with vape addiction and trying to quit vaping. And I actually text one of my friends just a whole bunch of questions about vaping because, yeah, I don't vape. I've never smoked beyond like trying it at some house parties when I was like 15. I also haven't regularly drunk since I was like 19, so I'm kind of like not into drinking culture, which I know smoking and drinking culture is very compatible with vape because, you know, just like how people would go out for cigarettes at bars or clubs, vaping is the new thing. And also, you know, I don't work in an office anymore, so cigarette breaks or vape breaks aren't really a thing where you can socialize with your co-workers. So I've never really had like any incentive to ever even try a vape. Like I haven't even tried a vape before. So I thought I'd ask someone who's close to me, you know, what's the deal? But just quickly, an article on The Guardian, how much nicotine is in a cigarette compared to a vape? So generally, a smoker absorbs between 1 milligram and 2 milligrams of nicotine from a single cigarette. Although there is between 8 milligrams and 20 milligrams of nicotine, only a fraction is actually inhaled, generally thought to be about a tenth. Various factors alter this, the strength of the filter, how much is lost in the smoke, but the amount is a general rule of thumb. So moving on to vapes, some of the most popular vapes on the market are advertised as coming in nicotine strengths of 0, 10 milligrams and 20 milligrams. So a 2 milliliter vape typically contains 0, 20 or 40 milligrams of nicotine and allows for 600 to 800 puffs. A 20 millimeter vape with 40 milligrams of nicotine is therefore the equivalent of smoking 1 or 2 packs of 20 cigarettes. But when a vape is illegal, it may contain a lot more e-liquid and the strength per milliliter could be far higher than allowed. This means it offers thousands of puffs and is the equivalent of hundreds of cigarettes. But that's pretty common knowledge, you know. Most vapes contain far more nicotine than regular cigarettes, and obviously the good part of the vape is loads of the other trash that gives you things like lung cancer that is not in the vapes. But what a lot of them do have is an insanely high nicotine count. Nicotine is what gives you the dopamine hit. It's very addictive. So that takes out a lot of the downsides of smoking cigarettes, but makes this substitute far more addictive for most people. So I asked one of my friends about vaping, so I gave him a whole host of questions. So I just want to read some of these for you before we move forward into the video. So I asked, when did you first vape? They said I had a Juul when I was 18. So the Juul was the popular one years ago before certain regulatory bodies started bringing in rules against them, which led to the rise of disposable vapes, things like elf bars, for example. Why did you start vaping? I started vaping because it doesn't smell and it was easier to hide during lockdown. I'd also quit cigarettes. How much do you spend a week on vaping? £30. How much do you vape in a week? I go through up to 5 to 6 elf bars a week. It depends on if I'm going out with friends or not. Have you experienced any negatives from vaping? Sometimes I feel anxious if I vaped a lot the night before whilst being on a night out. I feel like I've overdone it and my chest hurts a little bit. This doesn't last long, but I know other friends have experienced a similar thing. If I have been drinking with friends, I usually lose track of how much I vaped. How long could you go without it? Probably 2 weeks. And I say, for the final question, what do you think of vaping overall? I think vaping is better than smoking. However, I think it's stupid to start vaping if you have never smoked before, and that's why it's bad at the moment. Many children, teens are now using them. It is also more accessible, so you can do it more frequently than you would smoke cigarettes. I do appreciate disposable vapes are not good for the environment, which is why I want to invest in a longer term vape, but they have broke or I have lost them. Also, sometimes I'm vaping out of habit and not even realizing that I am doing it, which goes back to vapes being more accessible as you can do it basically anywhere. Sometimes I think it would have been better to quit cigarettes without vaping first. I would definitely like to quit in the future. However, as for now, I just enjoy it and I don't worry about it so much. So that is just one of my friends, but I've spoke to other people, my friendship group, and yeah, it's pretty much a similar story. Most people I know, because, you know, I'm 28, nearly 29, so we grew up as kids where you didn't have vapes and e-cigarettes seemed like they were just given by the NHS to help people quit smoking. So most people my age just got into smoking if they were going to do something like that. And then when you get a bit older, you decide, yeah, I don't want to smoke anymore. It gives me this terrible cough. And as we know, kills a lot of people. So I'm going to switch to vape to get off it. Now, most people I know who vape are former smokers. I also bizarrely know people who smoke and vape, which seems like, like the worst of both worlds. But I also know some other people who never ever smoked throughout our whole lives, and now they vape all the time. And that's the bad part. Even people like my age are getting into it, thinking it's kind of like just something to do when you're stressed or something you can do at a party, and then you just get hooked and not realizing, you know, even though you feel like you're not smoking all the time, you're actually consuming way more nicotine than is both good for you and you'd ever get in a cigarette, which also makes it harder to quit in the first place. Now, I'm not the only person talking about this. I've seen loads and loads of stuff about people trying to quit vape. And there's actually a whole subreddit which I want to show you some slides from. But I actually found this video on TikTok, which like blew up. Not really on TikTok, but I just typed in stuff about vape today. And this account, IB Reviews, has been documenting her journey, basically trying to give up vape. And she makes fun of it later because the first one that blew up was her being like quite emotional about it, and then she shows later that her mum was saying like, why did you post that video of you being so upset? And it's like her most viewed video. But I thought it was interesting because in my social life and my like extended bubble, I haven't ever heard of someone talking about wanting to quit vaping. It seems like such a foreign concept just because people are doing the vapes to quit cigarette smoke. The person has a lot of support in the comments, so I just want to play you some of it.
Wow, I don't know why I'm crying. It's not that serious. This is the type of shit that people don't talk about on social media because it's like, you know, something you want to hide from other people. But I've been slowly building up my motivation to quit, and today's the day. I actually have a whole graveyard of them. This isn't even half, there's more back there. I went to CVS and got myself some nicotine gum and some zero sugar candy if I get the fruit flavor craving. Made myself a nice little tray with all the teas and different supplements and kombucha just so that I can try to curb the cravings. And I even got this cute Stanley dupe from TJ Maxx so I can drink more water. You might think I'm overreacting, but if you've ever tried nicotine, it's really freaking hard to quit. I don't want to do the harmful stuff to my lungs anymore, you know? It's not good for your skin, it's not good for your immune system. I just want to stop.
When my mom found out that I posted my tears and snot video on TikTok and Instagram, she was like, why the hell would you post that? That's so embarrassing. The video went way more viral than I anticipated. Hello, I'm Heidi, the girl that quit vaping 4 days ago. When you're in your teenage years, you don't really think about aging as a bad thing. Like, you get older and then you're allowed to do more things. Like, you can drink legally or you can like rent a car legally. Like, it's all good things coming for you. But then once you're 25 or 26, everything is downhill from there. What scares me the most is that a lot of teenagers will vape thinking that it's cool and that it's just fun. There's no harmful effects because you don't see it happening to you in real time. I did not want to listen to people who told me that it was bad. Like, I know that it's bad. When I was 18 and I started vaping, I didn't notice. I didn't notice until now, and this is 8 years later. I'm gonna make a couple of videos following up on this because people don't talk about how difficult it is to quit vaping. They just say you should quit vaping. It's like, okay, but how do I do it?
I've read online that one of the side effects of nicotine withdrawal is insomnia, and I have not been able to go to sleep tonight. Like, every time I think I'm falling asleep, I end up just waking back up mentally. Side effect is just one of those things where I knew it was coming in theory, but now that I'm experiencing it firsthand, it sucks.
So I just thought those were interesting. There are actually like quite a lot of videos on TikTok about people trying to quit, and yeah, like even researching this video, like she was saying, you know, quitting's giving me insomnia and stuff. Just loads of stuff I'd never even thought about. Like, I know nicotine is addictive, but I guess because the conversation around smoking has always been around like getting lung cancer from the carcinogens and the tar and all the other crap that's in cigarettes, people have never really talked about the nicotine addiction. They always just said nicotine is just like what they put in it to make it addictive for your brain, right? But we never really talked about the side effects of nicotine itself. So I find this interesting, and it's reflective of more stuff you see on quit vaping. And, you know, I'm not someone who vapes, that's why I'm reading a lot of this stuff, but I did find these posts on quit vaping really interesting, about people saying just how insanely hard it is to quit vaping because of the accessibility and how much addictive substance is in there. So I just wanted to read you a couple. So a post by User Sensational: anyone else think that vaping is a whole different paradigm of nicotine addiction and its effects? I'm 2.5 days clean, staying strong, and fighting withdrawals. In the past, nicotine addiction and its detriments were of course known. However, the strongest point of focus for cigarette-based addiction was its health effects, which I just said. And it makes sense. As a smoker, you might go out for a cigarette, be social with other smokers and appreciate nature, butt out, resume what you were doing, and then head out for another in 30 minutes or so. But now we're literally carrying around tiny devices that propel highly concentrated nicotine into your lungs without the need to even use a lighter or wander from where you're sitting. The level of convenience and ease of access is absolutely insane. My vape was glued to me like a third arm, and my brain was completely hijacked by it. I could vape while working from home, while in the bathroom, while laying in bed, and I did. For the last 2 years, I have not been present in the moment. I've not been able to sit and have a conversation with my elderly grandparents without thinking when my next hit would be. I have probably missed so many interesting conversations and hobbies because I was just so focused on when I could next suck on the plastic piece of shit. And that to me is the real killer, my life essentially being controlled by a cheap Chinese manufactured disposable addiction machine. There is absolutely zero health benefits. The relief when having a puff is just me going through withdrawal, ending the withdrawal, then starting again. What an absolutely stupid drug nicotine is. The money wasted doesn't get to me too much, but when I think about how much of a slave I was, it just makes me very, very sad. Another post by Soggy Stranger the other day, hardest drug to quit bar none. I'm 30 and I've done every drug multiple times, some of which you've never heard of. Done it all, smoked cigs on and off for years. This is the hardest drug to quit bar none. It's too easy to hit it. I did all those drugs and never got addicted. I would quit cigs multiple times with the come down lasting only 2 days. I am completely powerless just after 2.5 months on this. I wish I never switched. It's easier on the teeth and the lungs, but it destroys your throat. Not only that, my cravings peaked on day 7 of not smoking last week. How the fuck can the cravings peak on the 7th day? This shit is evil. There's other people talking about like all these symptoms that I guess like no one talks about, like numbness, getting sick, plane rides being hard, always worrying about it being charged and stuff. One more post by Mandarin Oranges. So disposables need to be banned. Too many kids getting addicted. Seriously, I'm 17 and there's nothing I regret more than buying that stupid vape when I was 15. It infuriates me that so many kids, as young as I was and even younger, are going to become nicotine addicts because of candy flavoured plastic sticks. I can't believe I'm addicted to a rainbow Skittle flavoured pink vape. Try explaining nicotine withdrawal to a 15-year-old whose worst experience with sickness was a common cold. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. All my friends were doing it. I walk into the school bathroom and there's 3 kids watching themselves vape in the mirror. No wonder I got hooked. I have headaches every day. I get nauseous, lightheaded, dizzy, anxious. It's just stupid. I'm always congested. It's all so stupid. Shortness of breath. I can't exercise. I'm stuck addicted to 50 milligrams. Apparently that's a lot. No wonder 4 milligram gum feels like nothing. And that's why this shit is so sinister. Like, it was actually a big thing at the end of the Tory government where they started talking about like banning vapes or making it harder to get. But just like with the Alka-Pops of the past, like, you know, WKD, all that stuff we would drink as teenagers, it's so clear that vapes are designed to get you hooked really, really young, where you just don't know any better. And that's how, obviously, like a lot of people get addicted to cigarettes. And I know people in my own life who got addicted very young as well. At the same time, it's far harder to get cigarettes. And despite big tobacco being in bed with our government, we do have all these health warnings. Like if you've ever bought cigarettes in the UK, you're buying them in a plain packet and it has some like gross picture of someone with some sort of smoking related disease to try and turn you off it. Where vapes are all things that taste like things children like, and they're all bright coloured and lots of them have flashing lights. So what, is that designed for adults? No, it's obviously designed for teenagers and children, and that's the sinister part of like the business model is kids now just do this instead of cigarettes because it's easier to get and it's more socially acceptable. Now, there's an interesting story in the UK. This is back at the end of last year, and this is after an 18-year-old died after her lungs collapsed and doctors suspected that the chemicals in vapes were to blame. Children so addicted to vapes they can't last a lesson without one, as mother of teenager who died issues warning. When vape sensors were fitted in the toilets at St. Joseph's High School in Horwich in Bolton, head teacher Tony McCabe never expected what they were about to reveal. On the very first day, they went off 112 times. In a school of 1,000 pupils, he said, it was beyond anything I imagined. The school has been proactive in trying to educate its students and their parents about the risk of vaping and the extent of the problem. McCabe saying, some of our young people are so addicted to vapes they can't even last a single lesson without the need to pop out and use the vape. Rachel Howe could not have a clearer message for those young people who do vape. Her daughter, Rosie Christopherson, died 3 days before her 19th birthday. Her lungs collapsed and doctors suspect that chemicals in e-cigarettes could have been to blame. She started vaping in the August and she was dead in the February, she said. Miss Howe welcomes government action but wants it to go further. It will help, but I think there needs to be research. I think they're under the impression that it's safe. They're under the impression that it's better than smoking, and it's not. There's nothing on paper to tell you that it's better for you than smoking. Her message to young vapers is simple: don't do it. And I'm going to talk about the health side effects a bit more in a sec. But obviously, you know, for any child like developing in any way, your brain or just your body, sticking something like nicotine right into your lungs with a product we don't know the long-term health effects from is really bad. But of course, being addicted like that, being a slave to nicotine in that capacity is so bad, especially when you're getting such high doses. Because a lot of people say, and I'm sure this is true of vape as well, but a lot of people say, you know, I had a smoking phase in high school and then I quit as I got older because it was shit for my health, right? But imagine if those cigarettes had, like, I don't know, quadruple the amount of nicotine or even more. It would be far harder for people to quit, and that's what we're dealing with things like vape. So to talk about the health effects a bit more, Guy's and St. Thomas's Specialist Care had an article by Professor Pallav Shah. So it talks about metals being in the e-liquid. So to analyze the true contents of popular vapes, the Inter-Scientific Laboratory, which offers regulatory and testing services, looked at a selection of vapes confiscated from school pupils. They examined them to ensure that the UK tobacco and related products regulation were met, but what they found were high levels of metals in the e-liquid, which far exceeded safe exposure levels. Results from 18 vapes showed following metal content: lead 2.4 times safe levels, nickel 9.6 times safe levels, and chromium 6.6 times safe levels. The World Health Organization says that high levels of lead exposure in children can also impact brain development and the nervous system, which makes these findings particularly worrying. Vaping-related disorders can range from lung damage to worsening asthma symptoms, which include wheezing, coughing, and chest tightness. The most severe negative effects of vaping have resulted in people being connected to artificial lungs after experiencing lung failure, which occurred in the case profiled by the BBC. In some cases, this response can be overwhelming and lead to permanent scarring on the lungs. Symptoms of scarring on the lungs include shortness of breath, a persistent dry cough, which can worsen over time, to other issues like chest infection and heart failure. Further to this, a 2016 study found that vaping products which contain nicotine can also trigger lung inflammation and tissue damage, both of which are associated with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease development. And just talking about lung cancer, it's just like speculation. Most of the experts say they don't know at this point because people haven't been vaping long enough, but they do say there are parallels about the discussion between vaping now that there were about smoking in the 1940s. So a lot of people these days, I don't know why, I think it's because I'm getting bigger as a YouTuber, they like to take me making videos like this as like a personal attack against them. So yeah, of course, I'm reading you all the health issues with vaping, and at the moment, you will hear me talk about all these things, and you're like, well, that is far like less bad than, you know, what cigarettes do to people. And I'm totally in agreement with that. And vapes, e-cigarettes, all that stuff, as a mechanism to get people off smoking cigarettes, which kill so many people and have done over the centuries, yes, I totally support a product like that existing for people, including the other options. But it's clear the time for regulation has like long passed by the government, and now there's just such a black market. It just feels like it's just going to go absolutely crazy because so much of this stuff is illegal, even stuff you get at newsagents, and you don't know the nicotine count, you don't know where it's come from, and you don't know if you're like putting lead into your body because there's no quality control. So it seems like just another thing that the government have seemingly just like not cared about at all and are letting the dangerous elements of this just wreak havoc on society. Kind of reminds me about all the discussions with like AI and deepfakes. The government just seems to like not give a shit despite this stuff being so dangerous, and will only start giving a shit when it's far too late, and their action just won't impact things. I don't even know what the answer is at this point, because yeah, in theory you can say like regulate vapes more so children can't get them, and that is obviously what should be done, but at the same time I'm seeing the knock-on effect of, well, yeah, children can't get them from certain places, so then you're opening up a whole other market where children like will get them, but they're more dangerous, because prohibition of most things, normally leads to more dangerous outcomes. But I think it's just become so tolerated in society, people don't even think about the bad sides. The only good sides are, with vaping, is secondhand vape inhalation. Doesn't seem to actually really be a big health thing like secondhand smoke was, but we're definitely going to have to see about that. But yeah, I would say to anyone watching this video, if you kind of vape but not really, I'd say just, you know, don't do it. I can't control your life. If you like vaping and want to keep doing it or whatever, that's totally up for you. But I think everyone should just be aware that there are like serious negative side effects with this stuff, and being severely addicted to any substance is just bad for the human body, and it will be bad if you ever want to get off it and not be reliant on this stuff, because the longer you do it, the harder it's going to be, and it's going to be harder than quitting cigarettes because the amount of nicotine you're consuming, which gives you the dopamine hits and is addictive, is in such higher quantities. But on that note, it wouldn't be like a Kavernacle video if we didn't talk about the economics of vaping. Now, at the moment, the big tobacco companies aren't like heavily involved with vaping, which you think maybe they would be. At the moment, it's a mainly Chinese-dominated market, which is like super ironic because China actually heavily regulate vapes. So they're sending these vapes out to the rest of the world with their massive markets, the US being 50% of the market, and then like Europe making up like a lot of the rest of it. And at the same time, they don't sell as much domestically because big Chinese tobacco companies are still pretty in bed with the government. So they have a monopoly on this stuff and they don't want vape to eat into it. But yeah, this is a video I probably showed you already, and it's by a YouTube channel called Machina. Don't know anything about it, but this video was very high quality, and they actually got invited to a Chinese vape factory. Now, I don't want to play you too much of it because I want you to go watch this video. It's very well made and it's just interesting anyway. I always love just seeing like the behind the scenes of stuff like you're pretty much never going to seek out on your own unless you're like me and making a video like this. Now, it has an interview of like the manager or the CEO, and he's talking about the vape testers, and it says they need humans working on this because you need them for quality control, because you need people who are familiar with vapes and they know the taste. So yeah, like I said, something you're going to see is a worker testing so many vapes, talking about doing thousands in a day, and then also saying they vape after work as well.
Have you ever wondered what goes inside your vape? Today we're visiting a nicotine vaporizer company right here in Bao'an, Shenzhen, China. And actually 80% of the world's vapes are manufactured right here in this district. So this step kind of blows my mind. Our friend here is testing each one of them. I'm not sure if it's for taste or volume or I'm not sure precisely what. I'm also curious if he is inhaling or if it's like a cigar, just quick taste test and exhale.
这些都没问题吗？你一天大概能测多少个？
一天大概要测平均7、8千吧。
7、8千，多的时候呢？
多的时候就1万多。
你自己平时抽吗？那你下班之后还抽吗？
下班之后。
对，中国其实
最严
监管是最严的，
全世界都是最严的。
对对对。就像对于某些岗位，我们是必须他要会抽电子烟品控啊，你口味测试啊，调香啊，对吧？同一个口味，但是有一些很细微的不一样的东西，我会问他这个跟这个它的区别在哪里，看他会不会抽得出来。比如说这个微凉，或者这个稍微有一点尾调啊、发糊啊什么之类的一些很细微的东西，我们会给到他去抽。
So the reaction on social media to this was pretty funny because people were like, "Oh my god, some guy might have put his mouth on my vape," and they're like, that's probably like the least of your worries. Apparently, there is another sterilization process after they're tested. Not this company specifically, but with others on the black market, there probably isn't much of a quality control in that regard. But yeah, that is just so insane to me. Like, imagine being like an alcoholic and your job is to just like taste like pints, like in massive quantities all day, or be a cigarette smoker and just be like testing cigarettes all day for your job. I obviously just feel really bad for people who have to do that because either you've gone into this role because you're addicted or you need money, so you work in the vape factory and maybe you kind of did it, but now you're fully you're doing 10,000 vapes a day. And again, because we don't know much, we obviously don't know the negative side effects of vaping, but you could imagine if there's going to be any, this guy is going to get them. But just like with how cigars give people like mouth cancer and throat cancer, and we talk about all the bad shit that might be in vapes, it's still probably not going to be great for this guy's health, especially because he vapes afterwards as well. And we don't know how much he does that. And we don't know if you get any supply from the workshop itself. So yeah, all around a bad thing. And I was looking for like other information about factories that make vapes that, you know, have gone on the record to talk about them. There's not much to find really in terms of like worker exploitation or like vape type sweatshop places. Couldn't really find them. And from this video, obviously, because they wanted to show off this factory, it does look, you know, pretty okay as a factory goes. Doesn't talk about the pay or anything, but yeah, these people are being exploited. Obviously, I just haven't seen any evidence that it's particularly notorious. Although I will say, I really, really wouldn't be surprised if it also was really bad in certain places. Now, I want to talk about the general, like, global economy when it comes to vapes, mainly in regard to China. An article from the Associated Press back in December. So China is where 90% of the world's vaping devices are manufactured. And in 2022, Beijing banned all domestic sales of flavored vapes, which actually crushed a lot of the domestic market in China, but those that did well were the ones that exported mainly to America and Europe. So China's enforcement owes it to the government's greater power over companies and willingness to levy stiff penalties. Chinese state media has trumpeted crackdowns, including a March raid on a nationwide distribution network in which authorities seized e-cigarette inventory valued at $21 million and arrested 10 people. Sales of vapes, now permitted only in unpopular tobacco flavors, plummeted from $2.9 billion in 2021 to $1.7 billion in China last year, according to market research from Euromonitor International. Sales are predicted to fall much in 2024. In banning flavors, China cites the same health concerns with youth vaping as other governments, but Beijing has a unique conflict of interest in the crackdown. It also runs a state cigarette monopoly, which accounts for 8.7% of China's tax revenue and directly benefits from strict e-cigarette regulation. China National Tobacco Corp, according to Euromonitor, last year sold more than 2.4 trillion cigarettes, nearly 4 times as many as US-based tobacco giant Philip Morris International reported selling last year. As China cracks down on e-cigarettes domestically, it continues to help vape manufacturers, including Heaven's Gifts, export millions of candy-flavored vapes. With the domestic flavor ban, China also levied new taxes on e-cigarette manufacturers, importers, and domestic distributors. But those taxes don't apply to e-cigarette manufacturers targeting overseas markets. Authorities also smoothed the way last year for overseas shipping by whitelisting companies like Heaven's Gifts and many others at Shenzhen's airport, requiring fewer export inspections, according to Heaven's Gifts and a post last year from China's e-cigarette association. Obviously, things like elf bars have become like the dominant form of vaping or people using e-cigarettes, but before it was Juul, and this is partly due to the FDA. So when the US FDA tightened e-cigarette rules in 2020, it made what public health groups would call a monumental blunder that supercharged production of disposables in flavors appealing to teenagers. In the year before the implementation of those rules, Juul dominated the market with its flavored pods, the favorite among teens. The FDA outlawed sweet flavors in pod-based devices, but exempted the other device types, including disposables. The agency said it didn't want to restrict options for adults who might want to use other kinds of e-cigarettes to quit smoking. All companies would still need FDA authorization. The result, the industry shifted en masse towards producing candy-flavored disposables for the US market. In terms of the UK, they had a more permissive regulatory environment, and as the US debated banning flavors, the UK allowed them, while setting limits on nicotine levels instead and requiring vape companies to register with regulators. US youth vaping surged with the rise of Juul in 2018 and 19, but it was more controlled in the UK until the introduction of the elf bar and similar disposables. Then it jumped. A survey released in June by Action on Smoking and Health found that more than 20% of children aged 11 to 17 had tried vaping by 2023, which was up by 14% in 2020. The increase the survey found was driven overwhelmingly by disposables, the elf bar, being the most popular. And just to end this little bit on disposables, an article by Time about the environmental impact says, in addition to creating plenty of plastic waste, discarded e-cigarettes can be considered both e-waste because of their circuitry and lithium-ion batteries, and hazardous waste because they contain nicotine. E-cigarettes are also difficult to recycle, and many people don't even try. A 2022 survey found that just 8% of teen or young adult vapers sent their disposables to recycling facilities. Within the e-cigarette category, disposables pose the highest potential environmental cost because they aren't used as long as refillables. When reading all of that stuff and thinking about the disposable waste, thinking about it being marketed to children, thinking about how addicting it is, although it seems like not that bad on the surface because it's been marketed and used as a replacement for cigarettes, which everyone knows is bad, it's just so dystopian. It's targeted towards children. The FDA made rules, so the more environmentally hazardous one becomes the way more popular one. The UK regulation is pretty non-existent when it comes to like what kind of e-cigarette there is. It's just about the nicotine content. And then you have like a country like China where the government, because of state tobacco, but also because it knows it's bad for people, the government doesn't really allow much vapes in China, but they'll happily let companies export it overseas, like for profit and stuff. So then you just have this nightmare of this thing that's becoming so popular with children and young people, which is so addictive, potentially could be really bad for your health in the long run because we simply don't know at this point. And it's also terrible for the environment with most people just chucking them away, or as you've probably seen, chucking them on the floor or chucking them in a bush, because that's where I always see them. And there's simply like no purpose to this product. And as we've seen, and as we're probably going to see in the future, we see the conditions in which they're made, and yeah, that factory didn't look like the worst thing I've ever seen, but there were people testing 10,000 vapes a day, and that's what you need to sell this product. So there's literally like the slimmest benefit to vape and disposable vapes that could be achieved by something like more regulated and more environmentally friendly. But as we know with a lot of this stuff, it's just a race to who can create the cheapest and most addictive thing out there so we can capture the market quickest. And it seems products like the Elf Bar are doing that. So yeah, this was a fun video to make in some ways, but concerning because I know one day in like 15 years time, when it's like first death from lung cancer caused by vaping, I'm going to look back at this video and be like, oh, yeah, I guess loads of people did know at the time. And just like with cigarettes back in the day, there's a reason no one regulated it properly. And also I predict we're going to see more big tobacco companies are going to start dominating the vape market. And as cigarettes get slowly banned across the world, and we're seeing that happening, pushes to actually ban it in places like New Zealand from people who were born after a certain date, then you're going to see those companies get into vape. And it's just going to be the next cigarettes, even though it might not cause lung cancer as much. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.